If you leave the room thinking, did I sound dumb? Was I annoying? Did I talk too much? Or do uncomfortable things just so someone else doesn't feel uncomfortable? Then this is for you. This is a podcast about girlhood, womanhood, and what we've experienced. This is where we will share stories, some funny, some not so funny. Here we all share one thing. We're anxious as fuck.
Thanks for listening to the Good Girls Have Anxiety podcast. You can find us on Spotify and YouTube. Check out the show notes to see the link in our bio for our merch store. We can't wait for you to listen to this next episode.
Welcome to today's episode of Good Girls Have Anxiety. I'm Caitlin, this is Lane, and today we have Devan with us. We'd like to welcome Devan to Good Girls Have Anxiety, the podcast. Devan has an impressive social media where she shares her love for health and wellness with women all over Alberta. As we've gotten to know more about Devan and who she is, we're more intrigued by her. On this episode of Good Girls Have Anxiety, Devan will talk about her passion for health and wellness, experience in the media and entertainment industry, including her time working at Jerry Springer, as well as what led to her nervous breakdown and how she's since recovered. Hi, Devan.
Hi. Hello.
We're honestly so excited to have you here.
Mm-hmm.
So I kind of wanted to start with what you had posted on social media today. You have a Pilates class coming up, and you had just you took the edge off of what my nervousness was of signing up for it. And could you just kind of speak of where that came from, or like summarize what you had put on your social media today?
Yeah. Okay. So when I was younger, I was a major Pilates girly on the VHS tapes. I was just popping them into the VCR. I was doing them all the time. I loved Pilates, but life gets in the way and you kind of stop taking care of yourself a little bit. You stop prioritizing exercise. So I've just recently gotten back into Pilates. I love it. I think it's an amazing workout. So myself and one of my girlfriends, we have a Pilates class coming up, and then we're going to do a sound bath also. And I've talked to a few girls that have had some concerns about it. And the concern is, first of all, I'm scared. I've never done Pilates. I don't know what the heck I'm going to do. Am I going to make a fool of myself? And second of all, I don't have anything cute to wear. And I was like, wait, first of all, what the heck? And second of all, valid. Because when I kind of got back into my gym routine, that was one thing that I noticed. I would kind of like look around and I would see everyone in there perfectly aesthetic workout, six-pack, like just everything that you see on Pinterest that I'm just not. And that's okay. But it was intimidating. And when I first went to my Pilates class on the Reformer, which is the Pilates machine that looks super daunting, I was saying on my story that I actually fell off the back of it, which it takes skill to fall off of it. It's actually not that crazy to use the Reformer. Like, it's pretty straightforward. I got the hang of that pretty easily, but to fall off of it, that was next level. So everyone in the room gasped. The instructor was like, "Oh my gosh, are you okay?" And the way that they reacted made me think, this probably doesn't happen super often. But, I picked myself up. I was like, yeah, I'm fine. And then I just really thought back on some conversations. And I'm like, if I hadn't done the work that I've done the last few years, I would have thought about that moment for seemingly the rest of my life. So I completely understand where this fear of trying something new comes from. I think a lot of it comes from society, a lot of it comes from social media, a lot of it comes from within, a lot of it comes from our past. So I just kind of encourage people to try something new and get yourself out of your comfort zone, because this is my second class and I am thriving. And by thriving, I mean I didn't fall off of it today when I went. So I'm really enjoying it. And, you just don't know what you're going to create by stepping out of your comfort zone.
That was like the way you said that, I feel like will encourage so many people to try something new. Like, you have a very nice following, and I hope that's because you really put it very plainly and make people comfortable. And that's a beautiful thing. Not everybody can do that, honestly. So what brought this wellness era, like with all the retreats that you're doing, how long have you been doing that? What started it? Why did you want to start this?
all the things.
Yeah, everything.
Okay, so I moved to Calgary about 3 years ago now, and I was a lonely girly. I didn't have a lot of friends. My job sent me out here, and I was like, all right, I got to put myself out there. Again, something that I was fearful to do, but whatever. What was going to be the worst thing? Friend dates couldn't be any worse than the romantic dates that I've been on. So I put myself on a Facebook group and just was kind of creeping through people's profiles that were posting things. And there was a gal that seemed really cool. Her name was Tony, and she's a yoga instructor. And I reached out to her. I was like, oh, you're looking for girlfriends? I'm looking for girlfriends. Do you want to meet for coffee? And she's like, yeah, for sure. Let's do it. So we met up one time. And one thing about me is I'm a doer. You give me one small inkling that you're going to do something with me, and I have planned our life together. So me and Tony have one nice couple hour like coffee and tea friend date. And she mentions that she's always wanted to do kind of like yoga wellness retreats. And I was like, oh my gosh, me too. Should we plan one? And she's like, probably thinking like, yeah, sure, whatever. Like this is going to be another plan that like never like follows into fruition. But again, I'm a doer. So we left that meeting, and that night I went home, I went to my Instagram, and I created a retreat that didn't exist yet. And I filled all of the spots.
That is so cool.
So, I envisioned it looking a certain way, kind of based off what we had talked about. So I started sending out messages to women who I was like, maybe they can be one of our facilitators, because we only had so many skills between us, and we wanted to do X, Y, and Z. So we had to reach out to some other women. So within 24 hours, Wellness Era Retreats was born. And she was like,
oh my God.
Oh, you were not kidding. And I was like, she's like, you were super serious. And I was like, I'm always super serious about like my business endeavors. So that's honestly how it started. It just started, I guess, the way that it was meant to start. And it was crazy and like I don't even want to say chaotic, because it felt so good and it felt so natural that like for what it was, it probably shouldn't have gone as well as it did, because we were two completely different humans that knew each other for what, like maybe a few weeks before we hosted our first wellness retreat. Wow. And you would think that that would pose so many problems. And definitely, like we had to go through some growing pains and some ebbs and flows of just getting to understand like how each other works. But for the most part, it was magic.
Your doer persona, like, or who you are as a doer, like, does that come from a place of anxiety?
It very well could. It also could come from a place of ADHD and OCD and all of these other mental ailments that I have.
But the way that you've used it to like push yourself forward.
Totally.
Yeah.
I love doing things. I love planning things. People with ADHD, they say that you get like dopamine boost by doing things and by moving forward. So as long as I'm consistently moving forward, I'm a happy girl.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We've talked about that with Lane too, where I'd kind of like you to kind of speak for yourself here, but I feel like Lane is such a doer. Like when she looks at something, she's like, okay, let's get it done. And I'm like, ooh, I don't know. Like it seems too simple. And I like get in my head, but then there's Lane who's like, this, like her like setup with her mic and her laptop and her phone, and she's got it all set up, and she's got her Diet Coke beside her, and she's just gonna get it done. And it's just like it's a personality that it's an extra skill. It's not something that holds you back.
I also have ADHD, so I think it's like a hyper, what's the word I'm looking for, like a hyper focus thing.
Totally.
I remember like when I would be in school, like in university, and I'd have a paper due, and I would put it off for like 3 weeks, and then the next day I would do it, and I would finish it in like 3 hours, an entire paper, and I'd get an A. And everybody else in my class would be like, this took me so long. And I'm like, I don't know, like I just sat down, I didn't eat, I didn't move until I finished it. And like that's how ADHD brains work though, is like it's just about the dopamine boost, which is hard. But
totally. And you almost become like this panic princess that like just fuels you to get it done, because you know that you have a time limit and you really thrive almost on those last minute things.
For sure.
Because you're like, wow, look at all this dopamine. I am Superwoman. And then like, much like you, I did very well in school, and people asked me like with ADHD, how did you do so well? And honestly, it's probably because I left it to the last minute, and then I turned into a wild woman and I just got her done.
Mm-hmm. For
That's
sure.
amazing. I love that about you, Lane, and it's really cool to have you like that too. It's a superpower. Can we talk a little bit about Jerry Springer?
I would love nothing more.
Okay. I don't really know exactly where to start because we saw the documentary.
Yep.
I spent my lunch breaks watching Jerry Springer with my girlfriends. Laura, so we record from Laura's apartment. I should probably say that, her beautiful little condo here. Thank goodness we have Laura and her beautiful decor. Laura also watched Jerry Springer. Lane kind of dabbled, but you, on the other hand, what was your role on Jerry Springer and what years did you work there?
So I was a production assistant. What years did I work there? I don't even remember. It was a long time ago. I was 19. So I was a baby. Yeah, I was not even legal in the United States of America. But I had gone to school for radio and television arts. And after then, I started sleuthing through the internet and seeing where I wanted to kind of work out of. A fun fact, Oprah also was filmed in Chicago, as is Jerry Springer, and Oprah wasn't even on my mind. I saw Jerry and I was like, yeah, I want to do this. I'm sure my parents were like, girl, what you doing with your life? So basically I sent in an application and I was like, what would I need to do to work on your show? And we had some back and forth conversations, and they literally told me, they're like, you sound really sweet, but we're a little bit worried that this job is going to be too much for you. And I was like, just then that fueled the fire. And I'm like, I can do anything. And I was just like this fierce little like girl. And so anyways, I ended up getting on with NBC Universal. So my time was split between Jerry Springer and Steve Wilkos, his old security guard that had kind of a spin-off show.
Oh, girl, we know Mr.
Yeah.
Oh, Mr. Wilkos.
So just to give like a little bit of insight, like I rode the elevator with Jerry every day. He was so nice, adored him, taller than I expected. I'm also quite petite, so I don't know, maybe like my height ratio, like understanding
everybody's tall.
Exactly. Everyone's a giant. But basically my role there was, I had a bunch of different roles. So there was pre-show day, and that meant I would pick up the guests, sometimes from the airport, sometimes from their hotels. I had a purchase card and I would take them around Chicago doing whatever they wanted to do. But written in my contract was that I wasn't allowed to ask them why they were coming on the show. So I'm blindly hanging out with these people all day, thinking that I've made new friends. But you know what? When I watched the show the next day, I was like, oh no, I don't think I want to be friends. Like some of the stories were a lot. And I was like, that's just a little bit too much for my 19-year-old self to handle. And then the next day was show day. So we would do all of the green room stuff. Basically, one of the main things is that we had to keep the guests from knowing that other guests were there, because a lot of it was like a surprise. We would bring in, some baby mama drama, like the baby mama and then the daddy. And, and they didn't know that they were each there. So we're talking on our walkie-talkies like, oh, do you have green room 3? We just took them down for a smoke break. Like, you can take green room down there, green room 1 down there now. And just chaotic things like that. I had to take people to lie detector tests. I had to babysit people's children that were they couldn't find a babysitter. So they brought them across the country and I would just hang out with them. I would help them find guests to go on the show. So we would go through MySpace and Craigslist and try to find people that seemed a little bit quirky. And then basically we would offer them a referral fee to like rat out someone that was like going through some stuff.
This is so good.
Oh my God.
So did a lot. And then, yeah, like when they would have their food fights on the stage, I would also clean the food up. And then I would book audience members. And then I would take like, I did a lot. I did all the things.
It sounds kind of fun, like in a weird way.
It was. And you know what? For like a 19-year-old that has ADHD and needs that constant dopamine boost,
Yeah.
I thrived because it was like go, go, go. 16-hour days, for sure. Why not?
Yeah.
Could Devan nowadays do it? I mean, probably. But I really thrived in the atmosphere.
But I feel like that's like the perfect thing for like you to start out your career like that. Nothing can be scarier than that in my mind. Like it's like doing street team, but like mega.
Did you move to the States for that, or are you?
I did. Yeah.
You're from.
No, so I was on essentially what was a student visa.
Okay.
So yeah, I was able to do that. They did offer me a full-time position with them afterwards. They quoted that I'd be working 80 to 90 hours a week.
My gosh.
And they would have worked on my sponsorship essentially. But I was 19. I wanted to just work at Starbucks.
Mm-hmm.
So I talked to a bunch of immigration lawyers, and basically they just told me there was no way around it. I couldn't just live in Chicago and work at Starbucks as a Canadian. Like that's not how it works.
Yeah.
And a lot of people didn't know that. So when I moved back, I was like, well, my contract essentially ended. And they're like, did you not enjoy it? I'm like, yeah, I loved it. I just didn't love the idea of working 80 to 90 hours a week.
For sure.
So how was your mental health on the Jerry Springer show?
You know, looking back, I don't think it was amazing. But when you're 19, you don't realize those things. Like when I was 19, you didn't have the resources that 19-year-olds do nowadays. So you have TikTok, you have, Google, but Google on steroids.
Yeah.
And you have so many different resources. You have people talking about mental health. Like this was years ago, and that was very hush hush. I didn't know what anxiety was. I didn't know what depression was. I probably had both at that time, but I had no idea.
Mm-hmm.
Was there something like later on that we had kind of briefly spoken about a time in your life where you had, what else do we call it? Like a breakdown?
Yeah, it was a clinical nervous breakdown.
Okay.
Yeah.
What started that?
So to this day, it's hard to kind of pinpoint one thing because I think it was honestly years of just being this little Energizer bunny, go, 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 being such a yes girl. Yeah, I have such cool life experiences and stories, but I didn't know when to stop. I still sometimes wonder if I know when to stop, but I have more awareness now when I'm starting to feel burnt out. I'm starting to feel like I need a break, and I offer myself that grace to take a break. But back then, you're hustling, you're trying to get into your career. I was going into a difficult industry of radio and television where you are pretty much just waiting to prove yourself so that you can take that next step up. So it was a lot of years of work, not taking a lot of time for myself, growing my social media following, working in radio, television, doing promotions and bartending on the side, just taking on everything to be able to kind of financially, hopefully make myself stable, and to also make a name for myself. So I think it was a combination of a lot of that, some deaths, that were really hard to deal with, that I didn't go to therapy for. And my gosh, I wish I did. And just some tricky situations that I didn't actually stop to recognize that I wasn't handling very well. So I think it was just a combination of literally living off fumes. And then at one point, my body just essentially broke. That's the only way I can describe it. Like I woke up one day, there were signs. Like looking back, I started having panic attacks, which I actually thought were allergic reactions.
Wow.
Yeah.
So it would typically be when I was eating something. I don't know why, but I would have like a panic attack. They start to get so bad that I would start to black out from them. So there was that. But in my mind, I was just allergic to everything. And then, you kind of think that it's a couple different things, but I'm not really someone that I think that people would say would be like this poster child for anxiety and depression. I'm pretty upbeat, I'm pretty positive, I'm pretty chatty, I'm pretty social. And these are things that people don't always associate with mental health issues, because you don't see kind of like the other side of things that
Unless you've experienced that yourself.
Totally. So when I'd go to the doctor, they would be like, you don't seem anxious. And I was like, yeah, you're right. I don't think I am anxious, because I had a perceived idea of what anxiety looked like, and it wasn't me. So it took me actually having a mental breakdown where I stopped being able to form words properly. I couldn't leave my bed. I was getting all sorts of different types of treatment, trying all sorts of medication. It got to the point that my parents sent me to the States for treatment because I was on such a long wait list for a psychiatrist here.
So what was, like, when you went to the States, what did they tell you?
Pretty much what they had told me here. Why I went to the States is because at that time, I don't know what it looks like. Well, I do know that it still takes a really long time to see a psychiatrist. And typically to see a psychiatrist, that's somebody who can kind of juggle different drugs if you're not reacting to what your general, doctor that kind of does everything would prescribe to you. So they have a bunch of different drugs for anxiety and depression. That's kind of the first line of defense. But if you're not reacting properly to that, they need to talk to a psychiatrist who can kind of cocktail things together. So I was on a pretty long wait list, like months. And my parents were like, she's literally going to die if we don't get her in to see someone to like switch up this medication. I think we had tried 6 at that point, medications that just were not doing it and were making me even sicker to some extent. So they sent me out to Arizona, and I saw a psychiatrist there. And he worked with me on a couple different medications. The first one didn't work either, so I think that was my 7th one. And then finally, my 8th one was the one that I'm still on to this day.
How old were you when you went to Arizona?
How old was I? I believe I was in my mid-20s.
Okay, so that's a big step for somebody that age too, to like go and deal with that.
It was a lot.
Yeah.
But I also knew that like I could feel my body starting to crash in a way that I didn't know that a body could crash. And I was like, I'm not okay. And I don't think I'm actually going to last if something doesn't change in a major, major way.
But for you to have that moment, but then have your parents' support, amazing.
That's huge.
Like to have that support and it to help you get the help, like, we're just glad that you're good.
Me too. And, I will say, like, I think that when people think about the American health system, that they probably dished out like $10,000 to like get me out there. It wasn't anything crazy. Like, total, it was probably $1,500.
Oh, wow.
And it was the best $1,500, that I've ever seen spent, because it helped me to be here today.
For sure.
Thanks for sharing that.
Yes,
That's
of
really
course.
cool.
Do you have any triggers that are still happening like today from that breakdown, or are you kind of like healed from a lot of it?
Yeah, I think that's the thing, is that if you ever think that you're fully healed, you're in for a rude awakening, because it's the ebbs and flows of life. It's situations like, yeah, I could be doing really good right now, but you can have a traumatic moment at any point in your life. The difference is that I have the resources and understanding to know what can help me get back to an equilibrium now that I didn't have before. So I do have triggers. I would say some of my anxiety and depression, I think, came from friendships that had gone in a really tricky direction, especially female friendships. So I'm an only child, and I come from a military family, so I moved around a lot, and I think I pour everything into my friendships. So if somebody and I don't end up working out in a friendship capacity, like my life feels like it's over. I'm a very sensitive little being, even if I know deep down that it's for the best. I have a very hard time to grieve those friendships because I hold them so dearly. So I think that that's been the beautiful thing about the women's wellness retreats, is that it has restored so much faith in just connecting with other females. I'm like, oh my gosh, there are good women out there and they want to be my friends, and not everyone is going to hurt me. But that
Not everyone is gonna hurt me.
but it's trauma, right?
Absolutely.
You've gone through it enough, and people can be vicious when you're younger. People can be vicious when you're older.
I mean,
too.
even more vicious in your 30s.
Right?
And then when
Don't
you become a
say
parent.
that.
No, but like, let's be real.
You're gonna
Like, I've
stress me
had,
out.
but it's not.
And some people are just not your people, and that's okay.
Yeah.
But as a very highly sensitive person, you try and tell that to like 20-year-old Devan. She was like, someone doesn't like me, but I'm like so good to them. Sometimes it's just not meant to be. So kind of working through that and knowing that not every situation is going to be the same. I also have had some trauma in relationships. So, I'll be honest, sometimes before probably the last couple of years, I would see couples walking around the mall, and I would make this like narrative of how happy they were and how I was going to die alone. And I would almost spiral because I'm like, I crave that so deeply. I want to find my person. I want to have a family. I want all of that good stuff with the right person, though. So that would be one of my other triggers, is happy couples, or what I would deem as happy couples. These would be complete strangers, by the way. Like, I would literally see someone like grab each other's hand, and I'd be like, like, I need to pop a pill because I'm going to have a panic attack. So yeah, those were actually a couple of my triggers. Is friendships and relationships.
I relate to that so much. Like, because I'm 25. So I'm like in that weird transitional phase where like a lot of my friends are either younger than me and still in school, or literally married and have kids. And I'm just like kind of in the middle where I'm like I'm graduated, but I'm just working and I don't have kids. So I'm kind of in this weird middle where I feel like I've lost friends, gained new ones, and those situations are very anxiety filled when you're navigating them for the first time. Like, you wonder like, oh, why doesn't this person call me anymore? And it's like literally nothing to do with me. It's just like she's doing something else and we've moved away from each other in life, and that's 100% okay. But when you're a person that's sensitive, especially to like people who you want to care about you, it's like the world's ending and nobody's ever going to like me again, and nobody likes me and nobody wants to be my friend. And like, those are hard things to navigate. So I think especially as women, because women have like very unique bonds with each other, especially if you were very close before, and then all of a sudden that connection just disappears. It feels like you like lost something very important. And women need other women. So I like what you said about the wellness retreats, because like, those things are hard, especially as you get older.
And the cool thing, though, is that you never know who you're going to meet that will actually change the trajectory of your life. Like me and Tony, who are hosting the wellness retreats together, if I didn't reach out, we would have never probably crossed paths. Like, there was just nothing that we were both doing necessarily where we ever would have crossed paths. And some of my closest friends I've known for a year or two, and they have changed my view they've changed my brain chemistry on women, because they're just so magical and they're so good to me, and they're such beautiful friendships. That being said, as I get older, I also recognize that saying, like, people are in your life for a reason, a season, or a lifetime, is so accurate. And I think that it's really beautiful when you can look back and be like, they were there for a reason and a season, and that's okay.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, absolutely. But even with your wellness retreats, you've created like this hub of people with like clearly similar minds who are going to, I don't know about a better word than respect, like each other and your emotions. Because to go to a wellness retreat, one, takes some courage. Two, you've got to be there like willing and like with a positive attitude to want to be around people that want to feel good.
Mm-hmm.
And you've kind of created that. And not everything that you come, like in life, I don't know if you guys do this, there's things that I like kind of force and like, dang, I shouldn't have forced that.
Totally.
That's something where like, if you didn't reach out to Tony, like this wouldn't have happened. And that's another really cool thing that you've done. What are some other things that you do to like cope? Like even now, if you're having like an anxious day or an anxious moment, the wellness retreats, obviously. Anything else?
Yeah, so I do move my body a lot more than I had been the last few years because I was so, I was grinding, work focused, and I just wasn't prioritizing moving my body. The facts don't lie. There's so many studies that show that moving your body actually increases your mood. And I fought that for honestly quite a long time. I was like, no, there's no way. But I do feel better when I'm doing something for myself. So whether that looks like going and punching some bags at Rumble, doing a yoga class, just kind of meditating in my apartment. Again, before the wellness retreats and when I was quite anxious, I did not think that I would ever be someone who could meditate. Because even though I am medicated, I still have 10,000 things going on in my brain at any given second. So I've actually really learned the last couple of years how to meditate. And it is so good. Like, I really like it.
Do you actually like not think when you meditate?
Yeah.
I feel like I'd fall asleep. That's my only thing.
And sometimes you
Genuinely.
do. So I will go to like sound baths.
Sounds like a myth.
Right? I totally agree. And it's cool because typically, so what I'll do is I'll throw in an app and they have different meditations and someone will like actually walk you through different things. And as soon as a different thought comes into your mind, they talk about how you accept it and you just let it kind of like fleet through. And you go back to the story that they're kind of walking you through. It's actually really beautiful if you kind of keep at it because the first 20,000 times, honestly, are really hard because I actually tried it for years and I was like, I'm never going to be able to meditate. And then like this last year, I'm like, I am a meditation queen. So I was like, I am so good at this. But, every once in a while, it's not the best meditation. And you also have to be okay with that. Like, not every time is going to be super successful and you're not going to get what you want out of it all the time. But I would say there's like at least an 85% chance that it's going to be a good one for me now.
Okay.
So I do a lot of meditation. I do a lot of breath work, which breathing is actually really important. It doesn't just keep you alive, but it actually regulates your nervous system. So if you actually get into the hang of breath work, so basically it's different types of breathing where you're breathing in for 4, out for 3, holding your breath at different counts. And it actually calms down your nervous system. Again, when I was having my panic attacks, this would have been really helpful. But in the moment, you're like fight or flight. You're literally just trying to stay alive. But now if I start to have a panicky sort of moment, the breath work is really helpful. And we do teach that at the retreats. And yeah, it's been really good. But again, I know that it's really like rich for me to be able to stand on this side of things and be like, yeah, like do this, this, and this. Because when people were telling me to try this out and I was at the peak of my anxiety, I was like, nothing's going to work for me. I'm on my deathbed. Like literally nothing's going to work for me. And I wasn't even in the space to be able to try these things. So I think that these things work a lot better if you do have a little bit of a handle on the anxiety and depression that you're dealing with.
Yeah.
Because it just makes it a little bit easier to kind of dig into them and to try them out instead of just literally try to stay afloat.
Absolutely.
So yeah, those are a couple things that I do. Move my body, get some sunshine, because what do they say? We're just overcomplicated plants, basically. Like we need that. Some nourishing food, and then also I'll like treat myself to something. There's these creme brulee danishes that I'm like a huge fan of. And sometimes you need a little sweet treat. I know that we talk a lot about health looks like you're eating certain things. But like, if that's going to give you a little boost and pep in your step that day, go and get that.
It's not eating a 12-pack. Get one, maybe 2.
It's not. You're going to be fine. Get that matcha latte, get that overpriced matcha latte, get your Danish. call it a day. So, you know, I treat myself a little bit sometimes too. And those things seem to work quite well for me.
I love that.
And some days are just a complete wash, and I'm an anxious gal the entire day. That's just that. And I remind myself that it's just a bad day. It's not a bad life.
Yeah. I feel like that's key for a lot of people. It's like if you have one bad day, it does not mean the rest of your life is going to be one bad day.
And it doesn't mean that you have taken 7,000 steps back in your healing journey. It's literally just a rough one.
So back to Jerry. What did you think of the documentary?
The documentary was interesting. It was everything that I already knew.
Was it accurate?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. Okay, so spoiler alert, if you haven't seen the documentary, turn this off right now and go and watch it. But okay, so on the second part of the documentary, they talk about how a man murdered his wife after they were on the show. So I have a story that I can tell you guys. It's kind of like a spooky story.
Okay.
Okay.
Dim the lights.
So I would take these guests out all over Chicago. I would take them for deep dish pizza. I would take them to the Navy Pier and ride the Ferris wheel. I would take them shopping. I would do tons of, I said I would do them. I did not do them. I would do tons of different things with them. And there was this family that came on the show. And again, like I said, I'm not allowed to ask them why they're going to be on the show. So
That's still crazy to me.
it's kind of crazy.
You just like don't know who you're sitting next to.
No, but like 19-year-old Devan, like in my mind, Delulu was the Salulu at that point because I was just fine. I was thriving. I was in the Windy City. I loved my life. I didn't care who you were. Like, let's be friends. I didn't have any. So it was a family. It was mom, dad, and their 2 daughters. So I took them to this deep dish pizza place, and we had such an amazing evening. They were so sweet. I can't remember where they were from, but it was somewhere in the South because they had a Southern accent. And they were just great. Me and one of the daughters, we bonded over loving Fall Out Boy and all of this like pop punk kind of music. And they were just good vibes. And then there was a moment that really warmed my heart when we were walking out of the restaurant, and there was someone on the side of the street who I'm assuming was homeless, or an unhoused person. And the dad had a bunch of deep dish pizza that he was going to take back for them. And he's like, hey, like, are you hungry? Like, do you want the rest of our pizza? And the person seemed really grateful and like took the pizza. And I was like, oh, well, like a nice, like human moment. I really liked that. So I dropped them back at their hotel. And the next day our show was canceled. And that did not happen. Like, shows didn't get canceled. It's a massive production. They're out a lot of money. And I was like, what happened? And they're like, we had to fly the guests back to wherever they were from. And I was like, why? And so I guess this man had been threatening to kill his family. And if anything had happened after the show, it would have been a liability for the show. Fast forward many years later, and I watched the documentary, and I wonder if that, I actually didn't check the dates. I wonder if that had happened before this situation, and if that's why they were really weary about, any kind of like death threats or anything like that.
Yeah.
But it was, again, like a very strange and scary experience because, yeah, you don't know who you're like having deep dish pizza with, but I feel like you can get a vibe for someone, and I did not get that vibe at all from them. Like, so, and that was the last I ever heard of them.
Isn't that the scariest thing, though, is you really don't know who you're sitting next to.
Did they do anything to, like, ensure your safety? Like, did they send you with a guard or something?
So that is a funny question because that day they should have.
Yeah.
They didn't. Yet, I had taken out what they had deemed as like a troubled teen. I think he was maybe like 14 or 15. And they did send a security guard with me that day. And the teen, okay, he was a little spicy. But we, I was 19. I wasn't that much older than him. I just talked to him like a teenager. Like, we actually had a really nice day. Like, he didn't give me any troubles, but you're putting me with 4 people versus like I was probably like the same size as this teen. Like I could go like, fist for fist, but this is like a grown man that is threatening to kill his family. What?
I feel like most of the people you should have had protection from, like, there's some pretty wild things on there.
Because was it just you and the guests?
Yeah.
So that's the scariest part of it. Like, at least have like a buddy system.
Were you like
nowadays,
driving?
like,
No, we would just take cabs or
Oh my
like.
gosh.
What?
You didn't even have a driver?
No.
And so no one would know where you were.
No.
Wow.
No, and I mean back then we had literally like flip phones. So like you couldn't. It wasn't fine.
don't age yourself, girl. We not that old.
Right. This was 2 years ago. I'm like a 21-year-old baby.
Exactly.
Yeah. So
It's just crazy they'd send a 19-year-old girl out by themselves.
But I hear it, like, you and I are closer in age than these two. But it really is like the Delulu, like back then, like now I talk about like microchipping my daughter. Like I joke about it, but in all seriousness, like I want to know where she goes at all times.
Yeah.
And then it was just kind of like, start walking, I'll meet you halfway.
Totally.
With everything.
Yeah.
So, I mean, at the time, they probably didn't think twice about it. But also I watch a lot of Law and Order and I'm like, oof, like those were the times.
And I think that, again, like the internet wasn't as huge and massive as it is today. You didn't hear all of these crazy stories about, it's not to say that bad things didn't happen. Maybe we just were
weren't
like
as aware.
blissfully unaware.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
But who knows? It's hard to say. Like even statistics are different and more accurate, I would say, nowadays. But yeah, back then, it wasn't really a concern, I would assume, of them. And to be honest, it wasn't really a concern of myself either.
Well, we're just glad you're safe.
Yeah, that's really crazy.
Yeah. So yeah, the documentary, I mean, people were working around the clock. People were sleeping at their desks. They would have their Snuggie and like they would be on probably, honestly, like they would be there for like 2 days straight. It was wild. I didn't have to do that, but I would work 16 hours easily. And it was full on. But again, you're young and you have that stamina to do it. So I did it.
How many years did you do that?
I was just going to ask that question. How many years were you there?
I was just there for half a year.
That's it?
Really?
Yeah. Which at the time I was very sad about because I wanted more. Looking back, there were some very challenging moments because along with Jerry Springer, I also worked on Steve Wilkos, and he dealt with a lot more like family kind of drama where kids were involved, where I was taking one of the parents for lie detector tests to see what they were doing to the kids. So that was something that 19-year-old, I mean, any age, but especially when your brain hasn't fully developed yet, that is a lot to handle. And there were times at the beginning where I called my parents and I'm like, you need to fly me back home. Like, I can't do this because you're just not prepared for some of the stuff that you're going to see and hear. I can give you one like fluffy story.
Yeah,
that's like a little less dark.
I want the tea. I want like the fluff, the fun.
So just my favorite, one of my favorite experiences was on my very first day. So I'm going in and I'm just like, what can I expect? And I was not anticipating what ended up coming forth. But they were basically like, we need you to go to green room number 1 and drop off some of these clothes. So I walked into green room number 1 and there was quite a large woman and she was being spray painted blue beside a blow up pool filled with creamed corn. And she was on the show because she was in love with her uncle, Billy Bob. Oh my God. And she wanted to prove her love to him, even if that meant spray painting herself blue and swimming in creamed corn. So we took that story, we rolled with it, we plopped the inflatable pool on stage with the creamed corn, and this woman swam. That was my first day.
Okay,
wow.
Were these real stories? Like, they were not, like, these are real people.
Yeah, so that is the wild thing. So I know that they talked about on the documentary, what was it? It was like this triangle of like where a lot of the guests came from. And again, that was not a lie. Like it was from like a lot of small towns where things were just a little bit unique. We'll say unique out there. So yeah, there were definitely stories that we would like hype up and like the underlying story was real, but we would like egg them on. So if they were kind of like a little bit mad, we would get them real mad. Like we wanted them to like put on a show on stage. But the underlying stories were...
But that's reality TV.
Totally.
It's just like in the back of your mind, you're like, there's no way that this is like even 20% real. But it is.
It is. Again, sometimes it's interesting because you almost become so disconnected that you start to forget that like maybe this isn't the quote unquote norm because you're around it all the time. Like I'm just like, oh, we're spray painting someone else. Cool. Oh, what is the food group that they're going to be throwing at each other today? And it was just like a day in the life. So that's why I say like the half year was good because you do become disillusioned with almost like reality when you're constantly surrounded by chaos.
Mm-hmm. That's really crazy.
Yeah.
That's really crazy. I think 19-year-old me would have cried like every day. That would have been so overwhelming for me.
I mean, there was another day that we had a food fight episode and they gave me 8 garbage bags and they told me to go to McDonald's and buy enough food to fill up 8 garbage bags. I'm like 5 feet tall and I was probably like, I don't know, 20 pounds. And so I would drag these garbage bags along Michigan Avenue, which is like the busy, popular street in like downtown Chicago where kind of NBC Universal is just a little bit like kitty corner too. And I'd go into McDonald's and I'd be like, hey, I just need enough food to fill these up. And then I'd have to call for backup because I can't drag 8 garbage bags back. And I'm like, hey, can somebody help me? They're like, you can't do it yourself. And I was like,
I'm imagining,
excuse me, like what?
I'm imagining like a wagon, like you're building like a wagon down like this busy street.
They didn't even give me a wagon. They just gave me the garbage bag and somehow expected me to, and they would give me like what they called like petty change. So they would give me like $5 for the day. And I would have to like, if I had to take a cab, I had to make that stretch or I had to walk. So I was like, oh my gosh, the McDonald's is literally a couple blocks away. There's no way that I'm using my $5 for this. And then I get there and I'm like, I should have used my $5 on this.
Oh my
Wow.
God. That's wild. So Jerry, you spent a little bit of time with Jerry in the elevator. Did you spend any more time with him?
Yeah, like we worked in the same office. Yeah. So I would chat with him kind of here or there. He was really nice. That's really all I have to report about him. Like he was just a nice dude, always had a smile on his face. People seemed to really like him.
Do you think he was represented well in the documentary? And how do you think Jerry affected the culture?
I think that Jerry was honestly a very smart man. He was the mayor of Cincinnati. So he had that background knowledge of how to kind of sway the people and like tell a story. And he had a background in television and reporting just in general. So he was comfortable talking to an audience, and they talked about how kind of like what he was doing at the beginning just wasn't working. Like it was a little too dry. It wasn't exciting enough. So I think that when you work in that industry, you're a naturally creative person. And I think he just took that creativity and was like, let's try something that we haven't seen and let's see if it sticks. And it stuck for many years. So
that's really cool. I've like loved this whole conversation. It was really great of you to share, 1, your mental health journey, 2, your wellness era. Love hearing about that. And I think we're all going to be partaking in some fun wellness retreats with you. Really looking forward to your Pilates class. So if anybody hasn't followed Devan yet, please do. I don't know how many people are listening right now, but hopefully you are, and hopefully you are going to go follow Devan. So we will definitely be tagging her in as many of our social medias as possible. I think that's it for this episode. Just really want to thank you for coming. You were our first guest, and I think it was like the perfect fit.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks for having me, guys, and letting me yap forever. I love a yap sesh.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Good Girls Have Anxiety. Check the show notes for more information about Devan and her wellness retreats, as well as all the places that you can follow us on social media and stay up to date with what we have going on.